The one thing I'm really sad we did not talk about was kryptonite and how that's his own only vulnerability. I really wish we got into that, but then I don't know, we got into a lot of other good stuff too. So
Happy, I like that you said that because kryptonite is made from his home planet, and it's just
that's
interesting.
exactly,
Well, it's not the earliest stories until what was going to be K-metal when it was first written. So kryptonite.
Right.
And they also had this thing, at least when he fought Doomsday, that because he basically his cells are like just gigantic solar batteries, like he can be exhausted. And so at least the way they wrote it at the time, the reason why he dropped with Doomsday is because he exhausted all of his energy. And when they put him in the tomb, he had no access to recharge. So actually had the Eradicator not broken him out and put him in this power battery cell, he would have died.
When he came back in the Snyder Cut, he's wearing his black
yes,
which is allowed to recharge, and that's why he stands in the sun, because it holds on to that.
Absorbs it. Yeah,
I haven't seen the Snyder Cut yet, but I saw like that Death and Return arc is like I reread that multiple times every few years, and so when I saw him in the black suit, I was like,
yeah.
But why is he still wearing the black suit in that last shot? He's tearing open his shirt. It should be blue at that point.
It was in the dry cleaners.
The dry cleaners. It was in
You
the
don't
other
have to make
universe.
it that complicated.
It's been dirty for a while.
Yeah. Well, if he was lying around with it dead and still on him as his underwear.
actually also,
And also, he doesn't decay.
Yeah, how did Batman know that though? Wasn't the Whedon version where he said the body wasn't decaying?
It didn't say it in Snyder.
Seems like it must have been the Whedon version because they spent a lot more time discussing whether or not to raise Superman.
Yeah, because they had like the joke of like Pet Cemetery. They had like he's freaking out, all those little clips, and that's kind of what added to it.
Yeah, Flash even did a callback on the Pet Cemetery. I liked the Pet Cemetery joke, I will admit.
There's a couple jokes I liked that they pulled, but yes.
Yeah,
Whedon had his points.
I actually was really hoping we were going to talk a little more about Superman and Lois. I really liked it. I just want to talk about it for a second because I'm so excited about the intergenerational part of it, where like the role of fathers to Superman was always so important, to Clark Kent was so important. Like Superman and Jor-El, like, and Clark Kent and Jonathan Kent, and now getting to see him be a father, you know, and all of the things that he's up against in that, but also in the terms of like, yeah, where does that kind of fall? And him really fighting for, I'm prioritizing my kids, like that kind of fight that he has with General Lane about like, hold on a second, you don't ever get to say that there are other things out in the world that are more important than me being a dad to my sons. But I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah, so I mean, he threw that in Lois's face too. Like, I told you when you got married, this is you're second to the world.
What I love about the Jurgens era, when they actually have the courtship, the engagement, and ultimately the marriage, and then with the last season of Lois and Clark, right? I love this tension of what it's like to be married to the ultimate, you know, first responder. Right. I mean, it's so many people said they hated it in Lois and Clark when, you know, the romantic tension was gone because, well, now they're going to get married and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but there's so much rich material. What is it like? You know, that's what I wanted to know more of. And so I would love to learn more about him having to, you know, put fatherly duties into all of this.
It's stories they haven't been telling before. It's new stuff they get to do.
Yeah. I like the concept of the superpowers kind of coming through with puberty as well. It'd be more relatable and stuff where it just sort of Smallville kind of touched on that, like when Clark started getting girl crazy and his eyes were blazing everywhere and stuff, and
best ever,
and that his earthly father understood that with that knowing smile, like, oh son.
Yeah, being like, can I do this alone, practice by myself? He's like, oh yeah, let me back up here, sorry about that.
And Superman and Lois is doing it because the kids have made it into adolescence.
Yep.
Well, that's another innovation that John Byrne did when it restarted in the 80s. Before that, Superman had always had the powers from when he first came to Earth. He arrived at Earth as he's a super baby. It's like the Kents find him, they take him to an orphanage. He's swinging on the fan overhead, and then the kids go back and adopt him. That's the original version that Siegel and Schuster did way back when. And then and Smallville, they had it with, they knew he was adopted. Everybody knew Clark was adopted in Smallville. In the John Byrne comic, there'd been a heavy winter, so John and Martha just didn't tell people they'd adopted Clark. But from 85 on, though, it had been that the powers didn't kick in until puberty.
A super-powered toddler on a meltdown is one of the most terrifying things that I can think of.
Right.
All kinds of people weighing in on the question of why the pastiches tend to be evil. We got overlooked pictures. Everyone hates the nice guy, and the only way he can earn respect is if he's a literal god. Joe Coffey, I believe, because with most creators, as with most humans, fear is a stronger force than love, trust, or hope. Well, that's not a Superman thought. He wears this thing that says hope, even though in the Man of Steel he has to say it means hope and never demonstrate that it means that. Shannon Ledeen, a whole lot about power corrupts absolutely. I wasn't looking.
Travis,
there's the
Travis missed it. Yeah.
Where's my?
Yeah, Travis. I got you right there, Travis.
Blue Lanterns up in the house.
Right, Blue Lantern. I got the whole set.
Can't find mine. Okay.
I've got my own lantern to charge with.
Oh, I like that.
Oh man, that's
Regroup.
wow. We've got a
Wow.
You want to geek off?
Okay,
I got a capital N.
I have Coca-Cola Tic Tacs.
Hey,
You win.
There actually was one thing that I thought if we had time to bring up. Have any of you read Superman Smashes the Klan?
Haven't read it, but I know that story.
Smashes the what?
Superman Smashes the Klan.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Which was based off of
No,
a
but I
book
want
and
it
radio
now.
show called son of a.
Put it by your chest, dude.
I think
All right,
you
there
need
we
to
go.
just turn
There
off the
you go.
virtual
No,
background.
there you go.
Okay, there
Superman
it is.
versus the Ku
Cool.
Klux Klan. Yeah. So the book came out, or the comic came out in 2019, and it's an adaptation of an old radio serial. And so the yellow book that I just held up, the Superman versus the Ku Klux Klan, is the history of how that radio show episode came about, where basically they worked with
A journalist who'd infiltrated the Klan.
Yep, exactly. And so it's this story that's basically Superman fighting the KKK alongside this Chinese American family who just moved to Metropolis. And it's
13,
really cool.
16 weeks, some such thing on the radio. It was on for a bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
And they were giving away Klan members real door passcodes and it in real life, it had the effect of seriously damaging Klan numbers because guys felt awkward being a member of a group that their kids were playing and making fun of because Superman was crushing them.
And that's what I want to go back to, and I really wish that this year's Superman, right, could like do a little bit more of that because of the image that was shown up, right? Like if it was good enough for him to intervene back then in the 60s and 70s, like please, like now's a great time. Now's a really great time to chime in and
there.
take a stance. Yeah.
He's a
Superman
pro.
was this wonderful embodiment of male goodness in a hyper-individualistic culture. And I don't think that's what the con world and pop narratives are bringing in now. They're bringing in the struggle. They're showing you what it's like to not know who you are. And Superman did that, I'm sure. I'm not going to argue about that. But I just think the way...
But Beowulf...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, but Beowulf, a lot of the mythology, they had that struggle. It's kind of bringing it back in with ancient tales and stuff like that. Like all the great Shakespearean characters, their biggest asset or strength is also what brought them to their own demise. And it seems like we're circling back to that.
some Greek tragedy, right? Downfall of a good, noble individual,
including
Superman.
Superman.
Flaw in character and brings upon themselves great sorrow and suffering. Sorry, I had that definition like rammed into my head in high school.
Say by that, in Greek tragedy, Superman's real kryptonite is going to be himself.
Well,
There
the
goes
thing that I
again.
would
That
have
was
said,
beautiful.
the thing that I would have said if had we gotten to talk about kryptonite was,
Well, we are
that
now.
Yeah, but isn't that just like a huge metaphor for trauma, right? Like the one thing he cannot face is his own home, right?
Yep.
Because that is the most hurtful piece for him. Like that is the least known part of him. And so that when that comes back into play, that is the one thing he cannot handle. And I think that is beautiful.
And I never thought about it that way, but what's fantastic about that is he never integrates that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
He never, the void.
It is the one part that
in
is
his
siphoned off.
identity
Exactly.
Is the bifurcated identity, right? And that's precisely how maleness has been handled culturally without any attempt to actually have people reflect on the void they've created for themselves because of their trauma.
But he's the adopted child who grew up not knowing his own heritage. In the 60s, yes, he had perfect memory and could even remember being super baby, but barring that little period, he does grow up not knowing his own background. Like in the old comics, he didn't find out about Krypton until he was trying to figure out where kryptonite came from. And in the from John Byrne on, he's grown before Dad shows him the old spaceship, and likewise with the Smallville and others are getting it. Yeah, he does not know his own background. So he is the adopted immigrant who does not know his own heritage. And this is a very real issue.
Going back to Africa. And it's like, no, you guys are white people. Like, no, we're not. Yeah, you are. And by white people, it means American. They say American is white. And so it's interesting with the Superman going back to Krypton, not understanding that with the plight of the black person. And I'm sure there's other cultures too, but I liken it to that because we're sort of sent away. Africa has its own tragic demise in many ways. It still exists, but that culture will never be, there's a huge disconnect.
Well, and I think also of children of immigrants, right? Because for children of immigrants, you're never American enough because you look different, but you're also I'm never Indian enough, right? When I go back to India, because I'm so Americanized and I'm an ABCD, which means American born confused Vasi, right? But I wasn't. I was actually born in India and I am Indian. I eat Indian food and like all these things. And then there's just kind of never quite enough of either. And with Superman, I think that's kind of the thing too, right? Like it's always a choice. It's always which form he's going to present because there's no middle. There's no integration. There's no healthy. Like, why not both?
I really think y'all should definitely, if you haven't read it yet, read Superman Smashes the Klan, because in that particular iteration that Gene Luen Yang was the author, he brought forth. So in the original radio show, it was less about Superman and more about the Chinese American family that he was working with. Right. In this particular version. Yang brings in this sort of parallel arc where while the Chinese American family, particularly the children, are dealing with sort of being in this sort of space where they're, not sure about their identities, Superman has this parallel arc at the same time where he's going through this idea of, what does it mean to be me? I'm Kryptonian, but I'm raised on Earth and I don't feel like I belong to either world. And so right. So I'm going to teach on this at some point, this particular book. So
love it.
I was like, that seems like a great idea. Great idea.
Well, I'm ordering it now.
But Eric, like I think that's great. I'm mixed black and white, and I was raised by the white part of the family, and so any real thing that I ever heard about like the black half. It was almost like the way people talk about aliens and stuff. So there's a sense of shame, and I kind of found myself related to Clark Kent, where I can't let these people know I'm alien. Can't let these people know I'm black per se. And even though, so people would ask me like, why is your skin? Why are you so tan or whatever and stuff? And I didn't quite know I didn't have a sense of self. And the only, like I said, it's fear of the unknown. It's a small white town in Washington State. And so then later when I went to the Navy, I almost got my butt kicked a few times because I didn't know anything about my culture. And then finally I showed them a picture of that core family that raised me. I'm like, this is all the culture I know. And so they you need to read this book, read on this and that, and Roots and stuff, which tragically I was very naive and was so bummed out when I found out Roots wasn't a true legacy. And so that was very hopeful for me. But then in college, I'd taken US history from the Black perspective and stuff, and realized, oh my God, high school history, I was sinking down in my seat when we were talking about Civil War, slavery and stuff, and how all the white people had to come and rescue these poor Blacks, and not really focusing on the fact that actually a lot of Blacks rescued the Blacks. Yeah, we needed the white voice, kind of like with BLM now, or with Billy mentioning with the Asian and Pacific Islander and stuff like that. And it's because the majority. So when we see Superman, there's a lot of criticism, like, why is he a white guy? And I think it's because most of the world, when they think of Americans, for whatever reason, they're thinking white, British, Anglo-Saxon looking people, even though they know it's the melting pot. But still, when I was in the Navy and I'd go to other countries, they automatically assumed I was British, and they wanted to know why I was in there with the American ship. So yeah, I had that same face, Travis. And I realized it's my intonation. I don't talk like the Hollywood Black, those stereotypes.
Oh.
Well, Brody talks about it in Mallrats, So
Brody talks about conception in Mallrats.
he talks about if Lois got pregnant, what it would be like if she got a sunburn or a tan.
I keep flashing back to that scene, that deleted scene in Hancock.
Oh.
They're amorous in his trailer, but at the point of climax for the amorous activities, he very